first of all, historic migration patterns in the history of Frayser is very interesting and unique unto itself. But let me begin by saying most of the inner city, as we know it, and most of the neighborhoods that are today dysfunctional, had a pattern of disinvestment, both of city services, of financial resources, of people moving out. Most of those neighborhoods transitioned from being white to being black. And as they transitioned, resources and opportunity and services followed. As one group left, you saw vacuums being created. A vacuum of service, a vacuum of resources, a vacuum of opportunity. That is the case with much of Memphis in the inner city. Frayser, on the other hand, is unique in that Frayser was not originally a part of Memphis's inner city. Frayser was a suburb of Memphis until 1957. It was, in fact, the bedroom community for industry in North Memphis, for the Kimberly-Clark and the Firestone and all of those industries that were in North Memphis. So Frayser basically was the bedroom community for that in the 1950s when it was annexed into Memphis in 1957. Prior to that, most people don't know that Frayser was the summer home of the rich and famous in Memphis for a long time. That's where people who lived in Memphis went to summer. Dr. Frayser, whom Frayser is named after, was basically one of its more prominent residents. He basically developed a summer home there, and it became a train stop from Memphis as you moved north further up into Kentucky. So that's how Frayser sort of developed over time. It was this nice, idyllic, scenic place with hills and lots of trees that was outside of Memphis, that had some lakes and had rivers on three sides, and was just a nice place to be. Well, over a period of time, it was transitioned to a blue-collar, primarily white blue-collar area of folk who've worked in the factories in North Memphis. When those factory jobs disappeared and those factories closed, then those persons left and moved, as is the historical pattern of migration, from Frayser to Raleigh and finally to Bartlett. That's the North Memphis migration pattern. As they exited neighborhoods, inner city residents from North Memphis moved into Frayser. Those who could then moved into Raleigh. Those who could then moved into Bartlett. And so you find that each of those neighborhoods is sort of like an income level, I guess you would say, higher than the neighborhood that's adjacent to it. Bartlett has a higher income level and quality of life, and obviously being a city unto itself, than Raleigh. Raleigh basically has a higher level of income and quality of life than folk in Frayser. Folk in Frayser have a higher income and quality of life than many would say exist in North Memphis. So that's sort of the pattern. But what happened in Frayser was unique in that once all of this transpired in a short span of 20 years, Frayser had so many negatives hit it at one time that it's a wonder it didn't get knocked out. It got knocked down, but it didn't get knocked out. Coupled with the transition from being an 85% white community to becoming an 85% black community, this was compounded and accelerated by the fact that it was one of the few areas in Memphis where Section 8 housing was allowed to be built because it was so-called a non-impacted area. In the early days of Section 8 housing, you could not build a Section 8 complex that was going to be majority minority in a majority minority area. You had to put it in an area that was not going to be impacted. So people looked for majority white areas where they could put Section 8 housing for predominantly blacks. Frayser was it. So they moved and built a number of Section 8 complexes in Frayser, which of course accelerated the portion of Frayser that was rental, and those homeowners who felt their property values being reduced moved to Raleigh. Then you couple that with the fact that Frayser has never had any industry or real business of its own per se, that it was dependent upon jobs in North Memphis. Then the bedroom community itself is not laid out to accommodate public transportation because it's a suburban community, and bus routes don't work very well up and down those streets where you have houses that are spread apart, maybe on quarter-acre lots and eighth-acre lots, and sometimes even larger lots than that. So that there was no transportation, you have no jobs, you have a transition in terms of the demographics, and of course, you begin to have, obviously, changes in services provided. Some would say that public services began to be diminished. Frayser saw shopping centers not have the same clientele to frequent them, so it lost. Shops moved out, and so the quality of shopping went down and down, and so you got into this spiral. And of course, when you get into that kind of spiral, you obviously also facilitate and become a location for increased crime. And you have folk who basically now have less and less to work with and turn to other means of trying to acquire what it is that they need to survive. So we ended up in Frayser with all of those as a problem because of our uniqueness in part, but also because of the fact that historically you have these areas of the city that were neglected. And I just want to put a pin in it. Part of it was public policy. Part of it was pure public policy, where the city and the county did not invest the resources at the level in these neighborhoods that they were investing in other neighborhoods. And many would argue that that even continues until this day, that certain neighborhoods in Memphis get more resources, better treatment than other neighborhoods. I think one of the TV stations just did a thing about crime and talked about the fact that Harbortown was getting this kind of treatment with barriers to keep people out of parking, and certain other neighborhoods have been crying for help for a long time and haven't been able to get as swift a reaction as some folk at Harbortown were able to get. So, you cannot underestimate the role that public policy has also played in this, because yes, it was Section 8 originally, the building of Section 8 units that dumped a whole bunch of low-income African Americans into Frayser. Now, you've had a second wave of low-income African Americans dumped there who came out of all of the Hope 6 projects. Those that came out of Dixie Homes, those that came out of Hurt Village, they are all given vouchers, Section 8 vouchers, and many of them are in Frayser. So they came without the services, but they came with the needs. And they brought their issues that they had in terms of low skills, low wages, and in many instances, unpreparedness for upkeep of single-family homes, and now they're Section 8 vouchers living in single-family homes.